Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to our GT03 Daily Site Reports module training. My name is Leanne and I'll be facilitating our session today. So today I'll be providing you with an overview of the Daily Site Reports module and steps in GT03. And as always, if you have any questions at any point, please do feel free to ask them. So our objective is that by the end of this webinar, you'll be able to create a daily site report, configure site report settings, utilize the Daily Site Reports module, and generate concrete and aggregate reports, as well as log concrete test results. So without further ado, let's dive in. So the Daily Sites Reports module, or DSR module, tracks all of the activities, progress, and conditions that take place on a construction site each day. DSRs provide a thorough and detailed source of project site information for project team members working at offsite locations. And DSRs are typically created by superintendents, project managers, as well as project coordinators. And are there any questions so far about anything I've reviewed before we go into our demo? Okay, so now let's go ahead and dive into our demonstration of the Daily Sites Reports module in GT03. So this is our GT03 home screen that you will see when you're logged in. Today I'll be conducting our demonstration in the training environment, which does closely replicate the live environment. I may go to the live environment for some realistic examples at some moments. So to ensure that you can access these project-specific modules in the left navy blue pane, you do have to, enter your project number in this project search bar. So for our purposes today, we'll be working with project 70,000. And to access the DSR module, you will hover on Field Management and then click on Daily Site Reports. And when this module loads, it does open to this calendar view or tab. And now I'm going to quickly navigate to the live environment of GT03 to show you how this view could look like. So this is our live environment here, and we are in that calendar view as mentioned. As we see at the top over here too, we have some other tabs, which we will now review in order. So starting at the very front is in progress, and this tab displays all of our draft DSRs with the most recently created at the very top of the list. So as you're working on filling out a DSR, they get auto-saved, and if they are not completed or submitted, they do reside in this in progress tab. Some of these tabs over here have this search icon, so if you need to look up things quickly, you can do so using the search feature. And the next tab or view that we have available to us is this completed view. And this is where all the completed DSRs that have been submitted reside. As you see, each of these documents have an ellipses, and when you click on it, you're able to open the respective DSR, download its PDF, or download bundle, which is essentially referring to the DSR as well as its associated attachments. So that's this completed tab. The next one is the legacy DSRs, and this tab contains DSRs that were brought over from the legacy GT03 DSR module when we transitioned over to this new module we now use. So if there is anything in here for your project, they're going to be PDFs of daily site reports pulled from the old module. And since they are PDFs, they will not be editable, they will just be viewable. Concrete reports essentially contains all the concrete reports or PORs would be in this tab. You can also add concrete test results within this tab as well, which I will show you later on. Aggregate reports. So this tab contains two reports that can be downloaded in an Excel format and can be filtered as needed within the report itself. So this first report is workforce by sub, and the other one is workforce log. So this is for all who worked on the site essentially. So between these two reports, you can obtain information such as total workforce, total hours, management workforce, management hours, employee hours. Specifically in this one, you would get that kind of information. And then workforce by sub would be, of course, organized by the sub. Now, the next one is this calendar view or tab. And as you see, there is this orange warning symbol, and this will appear when there are missing DSRs or DSRs in draft. And we also have a color legend over here that kind of help us understand why certain days are color coded differently. So starting at the very first one over here, green, that indicates that this day has a completed DSR, and in the live environment or in actual projects, really, you will be able to click on this date and the completed DSR will then appear or come into view. The next one is these blue dates, and these blue dates essentially indicate that there is a draft DSR. Similarly, I would be able to click on the blue dates to view the corresponding draft DSRs. The red dates indicate that there's a day, or this day rather, is missing a DSR, and I can click on the red date to either indicate or start creating a DSR or mark it as no site activity if it rained a lot on that day or the weather was unfavorable. These gray dates over here, they just indicate that there was no site activity. So that's kind of how this color legend works. And now I'm going to return back to our training environment for the rest of our demonstration. Okay, so there are also additional features that are available to us in this view over here and in this right-hand panel. So starting at the very top is the glossary. And if you wanted to search up any specific term within GT03 and what it meant, you could do so within this feature. Of course, in the live environment, you would have some results here, which would be some terms that you could click on as well, or you can use the search feature. The next setting is this calendar settings, and it has some subsections over here. So starting at the very top, the start and end dates. These are the dates that correspond to the project cycle and are getting pulled from the project profile. So if you're curious and you wanted to see the project profile, you would click on these three bars or the hamburger icon, and then you would hover on project administration and then click on project profile over here. And then if you're a PM or super, you're going to be able to see this blue edit button. You can click on it if you have it in your view. You would see this gear icon, which you would click on. And as we scroll down in this window, we see that daily site reports is checked off and that the reporting period dates are indicated and correspond with the same exact dates we saw in the DSR module. So if you needed to modify those dates, you could do so here or within the DSR calendar settings that I just showed you. I do want to let you know that because these dates are stated here, the DSR module automatically generates a daily site report for each day based on the dates configured in the project settings as we see here. Okay, so I'm just going to cancel out, and to return back to our DSR module, you're going to click on the hamburger icon again, hover on field management and click on daily site reports. And we'll return back to our calendar settings. And as mentioned, if you need to modify those dates again, you can do so within the project profile that I just showed you or here as well. The next subsetting is this work days, and essentially in the setting, we can specify which days of the week we want the system to generate a draft DSR that is to be completed. And then there is no site activity. So this section is used to specify a period of time where there would be no site activity. For example, if there was Christmas break, we could add this by clicking on add no site activity. We would indicate the dates from the calendar. So say it's, December. We can do it from, I don't know, the 24th, for instance, to the 31st. And then for the reason, we would select the appropriate one, which would be public holiday if this is for Christmas break, and then click on apply. And essentially a DSR, or rather a draft DSR, would not be generated for those specific dates. Moving on to the next feature in this panel is audit log. And essentially, this feature keeps a record of all of the actions that are performed within the DSR module, such as, creation of a DSR, submission, any modifications in this module. It also keeps a record of who performed these respective actions. So if you ever needed this information, say if you needed it for a specific date, it was March 27th, you would click on it and then you'll be able to see who performed the action, what they really did, and if you needed more information, you could click on that and it will provide you some more details. The next feature we have available to us is this access help. And since K3 is role-based, this feature allows us to view and see what a specific role can do within this module. So for example, from this dropdown, if I select a project coordinator, I can see that they can create DSRs, edit DSRs, and view DSRs, but they cannot submit DSRs. Only PMs and supers can perform all actions. So are there any questions about the features we just reviewed or anything up until this point? Okay, so now we're going to spend some time creating a DSR, and you can create a DSR by clicking on this create new in the calendar setting, or if you're in the in progress tab, you can click on create new. Both of them will create a new DSR for you, either option. So let's click on this create new. And as we see, when we do that, it opens the DSR in draft and edit modes. And anything with an asterisk or marked in red is mandatory to save the document. Now, starting at the very top, the summary section of the DSR, we see that all of the other sections are locked at this time. And that's because we need to indicate the shift and start time of the summary section in order for these other sections to be unlocked. So let's go ahead and look at the summary now. So for the report date, as we see here, it automatically gets populated with today's date. However, if you're completing a DSR for a prior date, you can most certainly change this date based on your selection in the calendar. And then for shift over here from the drop down, we will select the shift that this DSR is pertaining to. So let's go ahead and pick day. And then the start time, again, we can indicate it from this drop down. We'll keep it as 7 for now. And this shift superintendent, this gets auto-populated based on who generated this DSR, pulling this information from your sign-in or profile. So since I'm signed in as system administrator, that's why it says system administrator. However, say if the day or shift super was not who is logged in, say if I am a project coordinator completing this on behalf of my super, I can go ahead and remove this information and type in the super's name. So say if the super's name was Blake Woods, I can go ahead and do that. Now, I do want to note here that you can have multiple DSRs for a day if you wish. Therefore, the system enables you to indicate the shift start time, as well as shift superintendent, and you can have different combinations of the three if you have multiple DSRs in a day. You also have this location option, and it's an optional field where you can indicate the specific location related to this DSR if you wish. If this is a new location, you can type it in over here as suggested, and the next time you go to create the DSR, it will appear in this drop down for you to select. So as you see, after we have populated these mandatory fields, the other sections of the DSR are unlocked, and we can navigate through the DSR sections either by scrolling to them like weather, or we can click on them and it'll take us there. The DSR itself is pretty intuitive and very user-friendly. So, for instance, for any of the sections, you might see this plus icon, and that is clicked on when you want to add information to the respective section. Some of these sections also have, or most of them have, this comments box where you can capture relevant details or comments pertaining to the section that this comments box is in. So that's kind of how this is set up. And we also have this copy from previous feature right at the top. And this is done to keep things efficient. So say if our DSR was the same as the previous day, we would click on this copy from previous, and from the drop down here, we have DSRs for the past 3 days. So say if it was the same as yesterday, I can make my selection here. And then I have the option if I want to copy over all the delays from this DSR as well as the persons on site. After I've made my selections here, I can go ahead and click on continue to copy this specific DSR into today's entry. I do want to note here that say if you begin populating a DSR and then decide to copy over from a previous one mid-entry, it will override the info you entered with the information from the DSR you copied. So just to give you that heads up. So let's go ahead and click on cancel. And now let's continue populating our DSR. We'll go back to the weather section over here. And in this section, we see that the weather is populated from a third-party app and based on the project's address and postal code as indicated in the project profile. So because we indicated that the shift start date is 7, we see that we have that indicator here, as well as we're getting weather for 2 hours prior to the start time, sorry. If the weather section is not populating, then it is likely that the postal code may not be indicated in the project profile and will require for someone to go in and add it in. This on-site weather station over here, if your project has an on-site weather station, you can toggle this to yes, and then you'll be able to update or upload rather the weather station data in the various file types that are supported here to this section. You can either drag and drop it or upload it from your local files. And if you wish, you can also capture some contacts or details regarding the weather data you uploaded. However, say if you don't have a weather station on site on your project, you can just ensure that this toggle is left as no and rely on the data provided from that third-party app. Are there any questions about this weather section or any of the other items that I talked about so far? Okay, so going on to the next section, which is delays. This section is used to log any delays for the project that occurred for the state. And essentially to do that, you have this plus icon, which you can select on. And then for title of delay, you would indicate what the title or what the delay was. So this could be weather, heavy rain. And then I need to indicate the cause of the delay. So since this is weather related, I'm going to select weather. And then I need to indicate the duration of the delay by specifying the start time duration, or if this is going to be an all-day delay or an ongoing delay. So let's go ahead and enter the start time of 9 a.m. and indicate that this lasted for about 4 hours. And then for affected activities, I will indicate what activities were impacted by this delay. I also have a tooltip here to guide my entry for this section. So say we can type in something like third floor concrete column 4, for instance. And then for potential impact here, this is an optional field where we can capture any potential impact this delay may result in or have. So for instance, I also have this tooltip here to guide my entry for this section. And hypothetically, we could put something like, the third floor completion by desired date. Okay, and then this detail section is used where you can capture any details about this delay if you wish. As you see, it's an optional field if you need to use it. So if you had any other delays to capture, you would click on this plus icon right here to do so. You can also delete the delay you entered by clicking on this trash bin icon if you need to do that. So let's go ahead and add another delay. You can click this plus icon here, and then we can enter our title. So this one we can say coordination, mechanical, layout, conflict. And then over here for the conflict delay, we're going to select Subtrade. And then from the Subtrade 1 field, we're going to essentially select or type in the subtrade, and this will be pulling from all the companies that are associated to our project. So for instance, let's type in ACE Electrical for this example. And I can select this one. And then as always, I can indicate the duration for this delay. So let's go ahead and indicate the start time. Let's keep it as 9 as well. Oh, for some reason, I'm not able to make another selection, but it's okay. Let's just do 12 and let's do 1 hour. Again, for the affected activities, I can type in what was affected by this delay. So I can paste some information here, like a clash between ductwork and sprinkler lines identified on level 1. And then for details, I can specify what this delay, any further information regarding this delay over here. Okay, so that's how we go about entering delays. Are there any questions so far about delays or anything else we've reviewed? Okay. So the next section is persons on site. So this section of the DSR captures the people who were on site, and it's divided into 5 subsections, such as management staff, hourly staff, subtrades, owner or architect representative, and visitors. So we can also use this section to document the total hours for the duration of this DSR in this specific section. I do want to note here that the data from this DSR, or this section of the DSR specifically, such as workforce and hours worked, gets pulled into the PM and Super monthly report. Additional, the total recordable injury rate, the TRIR, is also calculated based on the data in this section. So it's very important that this section is accurately updated in order to obtain accurate TRIR values, as well as that PM and Super monthly report. Okay, so starting at the very top for management staff, here we have a tool tip that indicates and informs us to also capture, or this is used to capture salaried staff. And to add an LS-DON staff, we're going to go ahead and click on this plus icon and look for that staff member who's associated to our project. So let's say it's Caroline Jackson. When I click on her, there will be a line item that gets generated for her with her role, and as well as for me to indicate if she worked a full day or half day. I'll leave it as full. I also have this trash bin icon if I want to remove her from this section. Let's go ahead and add another role here. This will be for Andrew. And this will create another line item for him. And I can either indicate if he worked half day or full day. So let's keep him at half. And that's how you'd go about adding staff. Now, the sync roles button is available for us to update the roles for the staff members indicated in the section based on their role in team management. So essentially, when I go ahead and click on sync roles, if team management has an updated title or role for them, when I click on sync roles, that updated role will be brought over into this section if there were any updates made. So that's what that button is used for. Now, I also have the option to add any non-LS-DON joint venture staff if I need to and if it applied to my project. Sorry, one moment. Also, if I had any related comments pertaining to this section, the management section, of course, of this persons on site section of the DSR, I could capture it here if I need to. The next section, or subsection rather, of persons on site is hourly staff. And this is defaulted to yes. And if it is, of course, indicated as yes, you are required to then enter the hourly staff that were present on site for this DSR. However, if there weren't any hourly staff on site, you would just toggle this as no, so that way you're not required to enter any information. We also have this tooltip here to kind of help us, understand what type of roles would be captured into this section. So it would be bulk crew, for example, carpenters, laborers, excluding self-performed form work. Okay, so let's go ahead and add an hourly staff by clicking on this plus icon. And then from the drop down, I can select a role, or if I need to add a new one, I can just type it in. Workforce is essentially how many individuals for this specific role were on site as an hourly staff member or hourly laborer. So let's go ahead and add 4. And this shift hours gets defaulted to 8 hours. However, it can be increased to up to 16 in increments of 0.5 if I need to. And as always, I have this trash bin icon if I wanted to remove this entry altogether. For activities here, I would capture the tasks that were performed by this role. So say, for instance, they did some masking, some dry wall installation. For instance, I can capture that here. To add another hourly staff role or member, you could go ahead and click on this plus icon. And here, let's indicate that there were some students that were on site for us. There were 2 of them. They worked for 8 hours and they did some administration. Okay. And we have this comments box over here if you need to capture any comments pertaining to hourly staff. Are there any questions so far? So moving on to the next subsection of persons on site is subtrades. And this subsection will capture the total subtrade staff and working hours. Before I get to that, I just also want to point out that this hourly staff does keep a tally of all the total hourly staff members that worked on site for this DSR, as well as the total hours. So there is this tally that is kept here for hourly staff. And now moving on to subtrade, this is used to capture all the subtrades on site, as well as it is defaulted to yes, like the hourly staff section. So if there were no subtrades on site, for instance, you would just ensure that this is toggled as no to not require you to enter information in this section. Now we also have a tooltip here to help guide our selection or entry in this field. And it says that the subsection is also used to show self-performed form work as well. So let's go ahead and add a subtrade by clicking on this plus icon. And again, we see that there is this tally similar to the hourly staff that is being kept for us. Now, subtrade here, I will click, or I can type in the company that is associated to our project and the subtrade that I want to enter, which is Precision Concrete Solutions. And then to add subtrade staff, I will click on this button over here, and then I can begin adding the subtrade staff. So let's indicate the role. Say if they were laborers as well, I can indicate how many laborers from the subtrade there were there. Say we're 3, and then we'll keep this shift hours as 8. If I needed to add any more roles for the subtrade, I could go ahead and click on add role to do that. This location field is to indicate where on the project the subtrade worked if I need to. So let's go ahead and type in East Block. Okay. And then for activities here, it's a required field, so we will capture what work this subtrade did. Let's do framework, for instance. Now, this sub-scope staff this toggle is turned on when our subtrade has their own subtrade on staff. So this is a company that we do not necessarily have a contract with. However, our subtrade has decided to, sub out some of their work and have bought the their sub on site to do this work for them. And if we needed to capture this information in our DSR, we have this option here to do so. So we can toggle this on again if we wanted to capture our subtrade information. So say for the subscope 1 field, this is a free text field, so I can enter the company's name. So say if it's A to Z Rebar, for example. And type that in. I can indicate how many from this subscope were there. So say if it was 2, how long they were there, where they worked. Say if it was the same location as our subtrade, we can write that in. And then activities would be, again, what they did or accomplished while they were on site. So we can type in something like rebar installation or installed. Okay. So if I needed to add any more subscopes, I could do that. Again, this would be adding more subs for our subtrade, people that we don't, or companies that we don't have contracts with, but we want to keep a record of who all were on site. We could do that by clicking on this. But if we needed to add another subtrade, so it's a company that we did have contract with, we would click on this plus icon to add that information. As always, we have this comment section if we wanted to capture any comments or discussions pertaining to our subtrades. So any questions about the subtrade section? Okay. So moving on to the owner or architect representative, this subsection is optional for you to capture if the owner or architect rep came by site. So to do that, you will click on this plus icon. It will require us to then indicate the role that visited. So say it was the architect, their company, we can type in Fairview, how many came, essentially. That's what it means by workers on site, how long they were there. And then for activities, I could enter what they did while they were on site. It's not a mandatory field, but if I wanted to add that, I could most certainly do so. If I needed to add any more owners or architect representatives that visited site, I can click on this plus icon to capture that information. This visitors section is optional for you to capture any additional visitors that came by site other than the owner or architect rep. So as indicated by this tooltip here, we want to add only relevant visitors to this section. So say if there was, someone from the Ministry of Labor doing a site inspection, we would want to capture that kind of information as it's relevant. So let's go ahead and click on add visitor. We can type in the person's name. Say if it was James Nolan, company was Ministry of Labor. If we wanted to add their number, we can, but it's not required. The reason for a visit, we can indicate site inspection. Okay. If I needed to add another visitor, I could do so by clicking on this plus icon, and then I can use the comments field to capture any comments or details regarding this visit and visitor. So this pretty much gives us a review of how to complete the persons on site section of the DSR. Are there any questions about this? Okay, so moving on to the next section of the DSR, which is safety. This subsection is used to capture all things or all instances relating to safety. And as indicated by this tooltip here, we want to ensure that we're capturing all relevant safety discussions and events such as incidents, near misses, and so forth on your site. And anything recorded in this section is also required to be reported in the appropriate safety tools. So at Alice Dawn, we use EHS Insights, which is our health and safety software or tool that is used to log everything pertaining to safety. So you would capture those safety incidences in EHS Insights as well as the DSR for our record keeping purposes. So in the DSR, you would capture discussions, preventative action, as well as those incidents. So starting at the very top for discussion, as indicated by this tooltip, we're noting any safety discussions that occurred on site for this specific section. To add a discussion, I'll click on this plus icon. And then here you can, copy and paste what was discussed with the team as part of your safety discussion. As always, if you need to remove it, you have this trash bin icon right here. If you need to add a preventative action, as indicated by this tooltip, it would be any preventative actions that were taken to mitigate potential safety incidences. You could do so by clicking on this plus icon to add that information, capture it if you need to. But say if I clicked on this by accident, I can click on this trash bin icon right here. Then for incident, as indicated by this tooltip, you would note any safety incidences on site, linking that relevant incident number from EHS Insights into this entry if you needed to add one. So let's go ahead and show you how to do that. You'll click on this plus icon here. If you had a safety incident on site, you would capture the title of this event, say if it was fall injury, then the incident number, which would again be that number from EHS Insights that was generated when we submitted a report within that application for this event. So we would be grabbing that number from that EHS Insights report and adding it here. So as always, if you need to capture multiple discussions, preventative actions, or incidences, you would just click on this plus icon or the respective plus icons to add that information. You also have this comments box to capture any general comments pertaining to safety in this section. Okay, are there any questions about safety? Moving on to meetings then. So for meetings, this section is used to capture meetings and relevant information that occurred during the shift of this DSR. So to begin, you will click on this plus icon to add a meeting. The title of the meeting, here we can type something like coordination meeting. This reference number field is referring to the meeting minutes module. So if you are logging meeting minutes in Gate 3, you will then enter that respective reference number for that meeting document here in this field. So let's enter that number here. If I need to add another meeting, I can go ahead and click on add meeting. But if I don't need to and I just want to enter this information only, I can leave it as this, and I can use the comment section of this meetings section to capture high level the items or the items that were discussed during the meeting. Now, these would be captured in the meeting minutes document. However, if you wanted to keep it high level and capture it in the DSR, you can most certainly do so in this section. So for instance, you can copy and paste some information over like this, like what was discussed, and then you can click on add to make sure it gets added to this section. Okay. So moving on to notable events, this section of the DSR is used to capture any important and notable events on the project. So as indicated by this tooltip right here, this could be anything like accomplishments of major milestones, power outages, and so forth. So to add one, as always, you'll click on that respective plus icon, enter the title of the event, say there was a power outage. We can type that in. Then in brief description, we can essentially add more details about the event. So for example, say there was a power outage from 2 to 3, power was restored at 3, but it resulted in delayed deliveries. Okay, if I needed to add any more events, I could click on this plus icon or capture any general comments here in this comments field. Any questions so far? So moving on to concrete placements, this section, as indicated by the tooltip here, is used to capture the daily concrete pour report information, including test results. So to add a concrete pour report, we will click on this plus icon here. And then starting at the very top, we do see that there are several required fields that we will need to populate in order for us to save this DSR. But starting at the very top or front over here, we have the concrete pour date. And as we see, it is defaulted to today's date. However, if we needed to make say this concrete pour report was for yesterday, we can go ahead and indicate that date right here. This location is basically asking us where on site this was, relevant to. So let's add some information here. Room, wing, footings. Okay, and then the concrete mix over here, we have a drop-down menu and we could select the one that pertains to this report. Let's say if it was high performance, the structure would be like, again, we have a drop-down menu here for us to make an appropriate selection. So let's select floor leveler for our demonstration example. The quantity, we could enter what was provided. So 1850. Why is this 1850? Okay, well, I'm trying to type in something else, but for some reason it is not recording it. There you go. This is what I want to enter. For required strength, again, we would indicate what was, provided as part of this pour. And then number of cylinders would be how many was poured. So say there was 4. This testing required toggle is defaulted to yes, and it is recommended to be left this way so that if you need to capture test results at a later date, you are able to do so within the concrete report tab of the DSR module. So if this section was changed to no, you will not be able to add a test result for your concrete report outside of this DSR. So just something to keep in mind. It's just always recommended to be left as yes. Now, the following fields are not mandatory. However, you can populate them if you wish for a more complete concrete report in DSR. This tickets number would be the tickets for your concrete pour. So for example, if there were multiple, you would just type in the number, click on it over here to add the ticket, and then you can add another ticket number similarly. Then you would go ahead and enter that cost code that's pertaining to this. Then you can indicate who provided this concrete, say if it was Precision again. And then their information gets pulled in from that companies and contacts that we have associated to our project. If we wanted to indicate the testing agency, we could do so if we needed to by selecting it from the drop down. If we need to, we also have the comment section here to capture any overall comments regarding this specific concrete report over here. Now, if I needed to add another concrete pour report, because say the first one I just created was for yesterday, and if I need to enter one for today, I can go ahead and click on this plus icon to do that. Now, for test results, if you had a test result to add, you could do that in one of two ways. Either within this DSR, if the test result was part of a previously entered concrete report. So to do that, you would click on this plus icon here, and then you would select the concrete report that you want to pull the test result from. Say if it was, the one that's selected hypothetically, and then you would click on continue to bring that test result into this DSR. However, say if you do not have the test result right now at the time of this DSR completion and you are waiting for the result, you can add the test result within the concrete report tab of this module if you receive those results at a later date, and I will show you that shortly. Okay, moving on to the next section of overall comments and attachments. Here is where you would capture any overall comments regarding this DSR. You could also you would capture them in this comments box, and if you had any attachments, as you see there are several file types that are supported, you would drag and drop them or upload them from your device into this section, as well as project pictures. So if you had any like milestone pictures, if you wanted to take or add it to this DSR, you could do so, just noting the file types that are supported here. So once you are done reviewing or entering the information for the DSR, I always suggest to give it a once over. Make sure all the information you wanted to add is in this section, or in this DSR rather. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and click on the submit button over here. Say if you come to the submit button and it is grayed out, that's an indication that a required field or more has not been populated. So you'll need to review your DSR, make sure the required fields are populated, and then you'll be able to see this submit button as blue. Since my button is blue here, that means that I'm good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and click on submit. And as I see, I get a pop-up that tells me that once this DSR is submitted, you do have a 2-day window to revert it back to draft. After, you will no longer be able to edit. And it's basically asking me if I'm sure I want to submit. So I'm going to go ahead and click on yes. And by clicking on yes, this updates the status of the DSR from draft to complete and takes us to this calendar view where today's date is marked in that green outline, indicating that there is a completed DSR for this date. If I needed to open this DSR, I could click on the date, or I could go to the completed tab and have that DSR within that tab over here, and it's right here for me to open as well. So say if I'm in the calendar view and I want to open this, just click on it. And as we saw with that pop-up over here, because we just submitted it, we do have 2 days to revert to draft if we need to add any more information to this specific DSR. So are there any questions about anything we've reviewed so far about completing a DSR, submitting it? Okay. So as promised, I'm now going to show you how to add a test result to a concrete report if you had to do it after creating the concrete report within the DSR. So we will first begin by getting out of this view and clicking on concrete report. Then we will look for our specific concrete report by the pour date. I know it was June 11th, so I can click on this one. And then to get to test results, I can click on test results or just scroll down over here. And I can begin entering this test result by clicking on this plus icon over here. And as we see, we have some required fields. Starting with test date, again, this is defaulted to today's date. However, I can modify to the date of the actual test. And then from the cylinder strength, all of this information will be actually being pulled from the test result backup, and you'll just be entering it here. So say if it said 15.2, the Q period was 7, for instance, and if I need to attach that actual backup of the test results, I can go ahead and do that by clicking on Add, and then locating the file from my local files over here, clicking on Open, and it gets uploaded here. And then I can indicate whether or not I want this passed or failed. So let's do pass. I want to bring your attention to this section over here. It says 1 out of 4 complete under the test results we entered. So since in the concrete pour report, if we just scroll up here, we indicated that there were 4 cylinders that were poured, it is requiring us to add the test results for all 4 if we get them or have them. So say if we had the test results for all 4, I can go ahead and click on Add Result and populate that information. If I needed to do that. However, say if I didn't have that information just yet, I'm still waiting for it, I can click on this trash bin icon and come back to this concrete pour report to add those results at a later time. As you see, there isn't a submit button for this concrete pour report or test results. That's because it gets auto saved into this section. I also have this ellipses over here if I wanted to open the DSR that this concrete pour report is associated to. So are there any questions about adding a test result to a concrete pour report outside of the DSR? Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly switch gears and go to our slides right now. And I just wanted to have a little call out for my supers and PMs on this call. There are some pretty neat additional technologies that you can use on your project. And if you're interested in any of these or anything else, please reach out to our contact team. I will indicate their email address in our chat if you're interested to do so. To reach out to them, please feel free to do that. We also host bi-monthly Fieldwire webinars that you can register for via our Learning Hub. Okay, so I know we went through quite a bit of information today. So if you ever need a refresher or clarification on any of the steps we've completed for DSR, you can visit our help pages by clicking on this question mark icon and then clicking on Gate 3 Help. And you can search for what you're looking for in the search bar, or you can scroll down to daily site reports. If you click on that, it'll give you some info about the module as well as some user permissions. This create a daily site report essentially outlines all of the steps for how to create a daily site report, outlining the same steps we went through today. There is also a video here to view if you wish. Then there is this daily site reports for mobile. So to make things easier, you are able to save the DSR module as a web app on your phone so that you can log DSRs on the go if you need to. So this help page walks you through the steps of how to create and add this DSR web app on your device if you need to do that. Then we also have some help pages regarding the aggregate reports as well as the DSR calendar. So this concludes our review of the Daily Site Reports module. Are there any questions about anything we reviewed today? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time and participation. Please always do feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Allez,